DEI is a huge step backwards for our country. It has taken generations, not to mention a civil war, a civil rights movement, to move past a stain on our nation's history. But we have made tremendous progress. But to codify discrimination in an effort to remove discrimination is a woeful initiative and would undo generations of progress we have made as a nation on this. Every tear, every drop of blood, the sweat of our founders, our forefathers that have fallen would be in vain for us to continue and to reverse the path that we have.
We are debating legislation that denies the sky is blue, water is wet, and racism is real. The major provision of the bill says to ban anything that acknowledges racism. And a few pages later in the exact same bill, there are multiple provisions discussing the presence of racism. This Republican approach is as predictable as it is nonsensical. On one hand, they're saying that racism does not exist. On the other hand, they are saying there is rampant reverse racism. Well, how do you reverse something that never existed in the first place? Riddle me that. While this Republican policy may have a new name, it's the same old tired game. Look, y'all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. Yes or no? As a main author of Project 2025, are you aware of this fourth pillar playbook?
Well, to be
yes or no?
To be clear, I'm here in my official capacity.
Yes or no?
So I don't want to have any confusion
I'm reclaiming
on that.
my time. You are under oath, and I don't want you to filibuster. Yes or no, are you aware of this fourth pillar playbook?
Okay, just so I can be clear, that writing that I did was in my personal capacity after getting the...
Reclaiming my time, I didn't ask you that. Are you aware of the fourth pillar playbook, and can you detail, as you are under oath, what exactly it calls for?
Again, I've not seen this fourth pillar playbook that you're talking about.
Moving on. I find it hard to believe that you don't know the details of this 100. Well, please, you are under oath and do not waste my or the public's time.
I'm happy to talk about all of the policy ideas that I've talked about. I've talked about them in that context. I've talked about them otherwise.
I want to talk about the 100-day playbook, the fourth pillar. Can you elucidate us to that?
Again,
all right, I'm moving on, sir. Mr. Berry, Chapter 18 of the Project 2025 manifesto is about the Department of Labor. And you are the author of that chapter, correct?
Lead author, yes. There's others too.
Yes, you are. I believe the American public should know exactly how you and the Republican majority that invited you to testify today want to sabotage the EEOC, rewrite the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and push all of us back to an era of Jim Crow racism. I'm shocked that my colleague across the aisle was in disbelief at our characterizations and assertions of racism and discrimination when even former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said the Republican side of the aisle looked like the most restrictive country club in America. We all know that Make America Great Again is about making America white only again. There is not one woman on this panel, and I almost walked out just on the strength of that. But the only reason why I didn't is because that is a systemic issue here in Congress and often for people who come before this committee. And if you don't have one woman in a position of leadership and authority that should be there, then that is also a problem. But again, women, hundreds of women, the report detailed hundreds of women who experienced harassment with no recourse. For over a decade, the FDIC, under your leadership and your predecessors, ignored them. Chair Gruenberg, in November, in fact, not that long ago, you stated that the FDIC already has, quote, appropriate policies and procedures in place, unquote. Do you now agree, and this is a yes or no question, I'm serious, do you now agree that the policies and procedures in place have been a cataclysmic failure and an affront to the many women who have been harassed, pushed out of the FDIC, and forced to change their career goals and life trajectory?
They have failed, yes, Congresswoman.
First, let me begin by saying this. Republicans, you sound absolutely absurd. Stop calling children aliens. This intentional, the cruelty is the point, this intentional dehumanizing and persistent persecution through your rhetoric is shameful.
The Biden administration's open border policies led to severe ramifications in which unaccompanied alien children were destined to be trafficked and exploited.
Unaccompanied alien children, unaccompanied alien children, unaccompanied alien children, unaccompanied alien children, unaccompanied alien children.
You are literally attacking children. I cannot take seriously anyone who's using othering language to bully babies and toddlers. Republicans don't want us to see the humanity of immigrants. That's why they like saying aliens, and even put it in the title of the hearing. And that inhumane approach is consistent with the actions of the Department of Homeland Security. Dr. Kafari, have you heard about the DHS policy of collecting the DNA of children and storing it into the FBI criminal database, yes or no?
I believe there is not a policy to do children.
There absolutely is. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this report from July 2025 titled Raiding the Genome: How the United States Government is Abusing Its Immigration Powers to Amass DNA for Future Policing.
Without objection.
This policy began under Donald Trump. In his first term, he authorized DHS to begin mass DNA data collection from immigrants, including children, and hand that data over to an FBI database designed to track violent offenders. Now that he's back, Trump is taking this policy to new extremes, adding more than 250,000 people to the database in just 4 months. I'm right here. 250,000 people, okay, in 4 months. This committee recently held a hearing on genetic data, and there was bipartisan agreement that DNA is highly sensitive and its misuse is a violation of people's rights, because children as young as 4 years old could not possibly consent to DNA collection. So I want to know what your office is doing about it, Dr. Kafari.
We actually wrote a report.
One moment, let me ask the question.
Certainly.
Is it the responsibility of your office to investigate abuses of civil rights and civil liberties, yes or no?
Yes.
Has your office ever investigated concerns about DHS agents stealing genetic information from children and uploading it to the FBI's criminal database?
Not to my knowledge during my tenure.
Well, for an inspector general worthy of the title, it should be a priority investigation. Do you agree?
I agree that we did a report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You agree?
I agree.
Should
that
be
we
a
did
priority
report
investigation?
on the matter you're discussing.
For the record, I want to be clear. Do you agree that it should be a priority investigation by your office to look into agents stealing genetic information from children and uploading it to the FBI's criminal database? Yes or no? Yes or no?
We
Your
have done the
office-
report
let me just-
that you're mentioning.
Let me just say this. Your office, according to Title V of the U.S. Code, Chapter 4, Section 417, this is the responsibility you are charged with to investigate abuses of civil rights and civil liberties. Children as young as 4 years old have not consented to the collection of their DNA. That is a violation of their civil rights and civil liberties. So this is not a trick question. Do you believe, given the charge and jurisdiction of your office, that this should be a priority investigation as their rights have been violated?
Unless the adult consented on the child.
Yes or no? Yes or no, Dr. Kafari?
We just got done writing a report
On what?
on the DNA collection within the Department of Homeland
I
Security.
thought you said you weren't even aware that it was a policy. I'm very confused.
There's not a policy.
Dr. Kafari, I'm not going to, play these games here because we're talking about children, so I don't want to circle the drain. But this should be a priority investigation because we have children whose civil rights have been violated with the collection of their DNA. This administration is turning childhood trauma into a permanent record. Republicans on this committee, you claim to be focused on protecting children, yet you're ignoring actual threats to their safety. You traumatize children with the threat of disappearing their parents. You traumatize children by disappearing their parents. You traumatize children by collecting their DNA without their consent and criminalizing them. You traumatize children by denying them food when they're hungry. You traumatize children by denying them essential health care, which is their human right. You traumatize them so much that they're afraid to show up to school, afraid to show up to church, afraid to go to doctor's appointments. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this July 2025 article from the Boston Globe titled, "I Want Daddy," as ICE detains parents and children.
Without objection, the gentlelady's time has expired. Ms. Mason
Stop
is
using children as
recognized
pawns. This is the
for
real
5
child
minutes
abuse.
for questions.
Thank
Thank you,
I
Mr.
yield.
Chairman. I appreciate the passion this afternoon.
What we are seeing in this moment is chilling. The current occupant of the White House is sending federal troops into this beautiful majority black city. And let's be plain about who is being targeted. In this year alone, more than 93% of youth arrests in D.C. were of black youth. More than 40% of the arrests tied to this federal surge have been immigrants. This is not about safety. This is about suppressing black leadership, stopping black progress, and criminalizing black and brown youth. Mr. Jackson, you have an expertise in reducing crime, specifically gun violence, and you have researched what works and actually keeps people safe. We've heard a lot of rhetoric today, loud, inflammatory, dangerous, misleading at best, so let's separate fact from fiction. I'll make a statement and you'll answer with fact or fiction. Let's start. A 14-year-old has a fully developed brain.
Fiction.
Yes, that's fiction. Easy. Middle schoolers are still learning and growing. Science tells us the brain isn't fully developed until our mid to late 20s, which means children do not have the same judgment, impulse control, or decision-making capacity as adults. Yet just this week, Republicans passed legislation that would prosecute children as adults and send them to adult prisons. Children in adult prisons. Next question, Mr. Jackson, fact or fiction? The criminal legal system incarcerates black youth at disproportionately higher rates than white youth.
Fact.
Correct. That's fact. Nationally, black kids are 6 times as likely as white kids to be incarcerated. In D.C., the focus of today's hearing, the disparities are even more stark. Despite making up only 51% of the youth population, black children in D.C. are 98% of youth confinement. For too long, black youth have been disproportionately criminalized, policed, and locked up for normal adolescent behavior rather than receiving the resources and support that are proven to help them grow and reach their full potential. Last one, Mr. Jackson, fact or fiction? Trauma-informed strategies like community violence intervention help to disrupt cycles of violence.
Fact.
Correct, that's a fact. Investing in prevention, mental health, and community-based support keeps people safe. These are real, sustainable solutions. In the Massachusetts 7th, which I represent, cities like Boston, which Trump has threatened to attack next, are partnering with organizations like the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute to make these investments and are seeing historic lows in crime as a result. If Republicans were actually serious about reducing crime, they would follow that example, but they are so unserious. Instead of going after predators and pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein, they are going after children, passing policies to ship middle schoolers to adult prisons. That is child abuse. And it is consistent with their pattern of abuse and neglect when it comes to all our children. They let children go hungry by cutting SNAP. They make children sicker by cutting Medicaid and taking away vaccines. They strip environmental protections, leaving more kids gasping for air during asthma attacks. They rip families apart with cruel immigration policies as children watch their parents taken away from classroom windows, and they ignore the strange fruit of young black men like Trey Reed hanging from the trees of Mississippi. Time and again, Republicans prove they are unserious about the care, the health, and the future of all our children. They are invested only in fear and control, and that's what they're doing here today. Republicans are certainly not keeping us safe. Free D.C.
Chair recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
What we are witnessing from occupant Trump, his administration, and Republicans writ large is not governance. It is a targeted, dangerous assault on the independence of our nonprofit organizations. We've seen these attacks take many forms, perhaps most visibly in my own district, the Massachusetts 7th, as the administration continues its unlawful campaign against Harvard University. Trump has threatened to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status, freeze billions in federal funding for scientific research to save lives, might I add, and publicly vilify students and faculty, all part and parcel of his attacks on education. But let me make it plain. This isn't just about Harvard, and it's definitely not about government efficiency the name of this subcommittee. This is about Trump and Republicans punishing people who disagree with them. It is about attacking nonprofits of all sizes that serve the vulnerable and marginalized and stand in the gap for our communities. It's about trying to intimidate every charity and nonprofit in this country and spark a fear that if you speak up, if you do something the Republicans don't like, you could be next. A hospital that provides abortion care, a local food pantry that feeds immigrants, or an advocacy group that fights for civil rights. Donald Trump is weaponizing our tax laws to attack nonprofits. At the same time, he is pushing for tax cuts for Elon Musk and billionaires. Ms. Yentel, can the president or executive branch legally revoke a nonprofit's tax-exempt status simply because it disagrees with that organization's lawful speech or mission?
They can't. The statute is very clear that that is illegal.
Thank you. Republicans think the answer is yes, but that would mean every nonprofit in America is just one tweet away from being targeted by the federal government. I'm proud that in the Massachusetts 7th, community-based organizations are speaking up and fighting back against Republican attacks, and I know they are doing it at risk of serious threat. Ms. Yentel, can you make plain what are the consequences to charities and nonprofits losing tax-exempt status?
Well, tax-exempt status is given to nonprofit organizations that do essential work to meet needs in their local communities in exchange for significant transparency and accountability. And if nonprofit organizations lose their tax-exempt status, it could create significant challenges for them to be able to do their work related to how and where they get their funding, and it could cause them to have to shut down their work altogether.
Their work, which is to the betterment of us all,
Which is
to the
to
collective,
meet
our
local
shared
needs.
constituents.
Yes.
Very good. Let's put this in perspective. Trump is firing government workers that administer programs like Head Start and Social Security, while also attacking nonprofits that provide resources and supports to vulnerable populations. Trump and his Republican cult do not care about helping people who are struggling. Instead, they want to make them suffer more. Now, before I yield back, let me ask the Republican witnesses if you all think Trump is right for revoking tax-exempt status for nonprofits for their political views. Raise your hand then if you think the Heritage Foundation, who wrote Project 2025, should also lose their tax-exempt status. Show of hands by the logic that's
I'm not
being
aware
applied.
of any nonprofit that's had its status revoked.
Again, the question that I'm posing is, would you please raise your hand if you think the Heritage Foundation, who wrote Project 2025, should also lose their tax-exempt status? Show of hands.
It's a perfectly reasonable speech
So
by
none
a
of you.
nonprofit.
So none of you. The shame and the sham of it all. Before I yield back, Ms. Yentel, I know that you have been harangued intensely throughout today's proceedings. Is there anything that you would like to set the record straight on or respond to in my remaining time?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I would like to use the remaining time to remind us all and every member of this committee of the vital, essential work that nonprofit organizations do in each of your communities for your constituents and the work that we do to support them in that work. Nonprofit organizations are local, they are transparent and accountable, they are nonpartisan by law and in practice, and they do essential work to meet the needs of all of your communities and all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. I yield back. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. You know, although the subject matter of today's hearing is to be expected, it certainly makes it no less offensive or frightening. My Republican colleagues very often like to quote Dr. King, I don't know, maybe for some faux civil rights credibility or to pervert his words to suit your extremist needs, while working actively to undermine his legislative legacy. On the first page of Chapter 18, Project 2025 complains about how the Biden administration has been fighting for racial equity. On the next page, it calls for eliminating data collection on race and ethnicity in employment. On the page after that, it calls for rescinding an executive order signed in 1965 that prohibits discrimination in hiring by contractors. Mr. Berry, do these terrible ideas sound familiar?
They're great ideas.
These terrible ideas sound familiar? Of course they do. You came up with them. Mr. Berry, I find it shameful to advance a vision attacking the very policies and agencies that have helped Black Americans secure jobs, earn a living, and provide for our families. This Project 2025 plan is policy violence, plain and simple. Its authors have placed such a large target on the EOC because of the incredible work the EOC is doing today. Last year alone, the agency filed more than 27,000 charges of race-based discrimination. These workers and their families have a pathway to justice, accountability, and healing because of the policies and regulations that Project 2025 is trying to get rid of. Ms. Wiley, how would workers be harmed by Project 2025's commitment to undermining crucial protections that are enforced by EOC and other federal agencies?
Well, essentially, it guts the ability to both be able to have the rights and have enforcement and protection of the rights that we already have, and we've been seeing improvements and advancements when we have been enforcing them. And I'm also deeply concerned with any suggestion that we should not be collecting data or that labor rights, the rights to organize, which has been so important for workers across race, including white men, to ensure that they're getting fair wages and safe working conditions. All of these are actually in that chapter, and they threaten our workplaces for people who are white, for people of color, for people of all backgrounds in this country. And I think that's why we all need to be concerned, because it really is about all of us.
That's right. They threaten our workplaces for every person who calls this country home. EOC offers essential protections that create workplaces where all of us can thrive, but Project 2025 aspires to be the realization of a decades-long crusade by Republicans to strip away this key pillar of the Civil Rights Act. As a founding member of the Stop Project 2025 Task Force, I look forward to showing and telling the American people exactly who you are, Mr. Berry, along with your extremist friends. I urge my colleagues to join me in building the inclusive world we know to be possible, one in which everyone, is there something funny?
No.
I didn't think so. Nothing funny about this. And in honor of my departed mother and for my 15-year-old daughter, I will do everything possible to stop you from building the world that you were hell-bent on doing. I urge my colleagues to join me in building the inclusive world we know to be possible, one in which everyone can show up to work free from discrimination. Thank you. I yield back. You know, this would all be funny if it wasn't so devastating. At a time when the leader of the Republican Party is trying to claim that he has no connection whatsoever to Project 2025, an outright lie, another lie like the one that he spews daily about Haitian Americans in Springfield, Ohio. Again, the leader of the Republican Party is trying to claim that he has no connection whatsoever to Project 2025, an outright lie. Our Republican colleagues have invited 4 of the manifesto's architects to testify today. I'm over here. In a desperate attempt to erase all of the ways that the American public has benefited from the Biden-Harris administration, this committee has instead spotlighted what Project 2025 would offer: chaos and corruption. However, we would be ignoring a critical component of Project 2025 if we did not address the fact that its creators have been secretly peddling a, quote, 100-day playbook, unquote, that contains executive orders and emergency actions to roll out in the first hours of a second Trump presidency. Instead of sharing this plan with the public, an indictment of your dangerous policy plans in and of itself, those behind Project 2025 claim it is too controversial to release. Ms. Guna Sakara, yes or no, as a main author of Project 2025, are you aware of this playbook or quote-unquote 4th pillar? And remember, you are under oath.
Yeah, and it's online on the website.
Can you please detail what exactly it calls for?
I think you explained it pretty well. It is a plan of action so that when Republicans and conservatives have another chance at a next administration, there's not lost time, and so that there is a plan ready to go.
I don't know if that was specific enough. You are under oath. Can you please detail what exactly it calls for, this 4th pillar? this 180-day playbook? Please detail what it calls for.
Again, I'd reiterate what I just said, that I think you summarized it quite well. It includes a plan of action on day one so
But
that
you didn't say
Republicans...
anything, and that's the problem. What is the plan of action?
It's to institute a more conservative vision on things that the American people want, because they're experiencing all of these hardships caused by the chaos and corruption of the Biden-Harris administration.
Reclaiming my time. I find it hard to believe that you don't know details of the 100-day playbook, but there's one person that definitely knows. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, and that is why, as co-founder of the Stop Project 2025 Task Force, alongside Representative Jared Huffman and dozens of our colleagues, we sent a letter to Mr. Roberts requesting he testify before Congress and release this 180-day playbook. We sent this letter on August 8th. The next day, he delayed his book launch, went into hiding. Kevin Roberts, what are you so afraid of? I am disappointed but unsurprised that the authors and leaders of Project 2025 are hiding their 180-day playbook. So today, Congressman Huffman and I are announcing a new, fully confidential tip line. Any person can visit huffman.house.gov/tip-line-form to submit any information you have about the secret playbook behind Project 2025. That goes for conservatives with a change of heart, workers at the Heritage Foundation, and our witnesses here today, who will perhaps find more courage when the cameras are off. I yield.
DEI initiatives destroy morale, decrease recruitment, and potentially violate federal law. These initiatives spread divisive and exclusive ideologies in our federal government workplaces, and taxpayers are left footing the bill. For these reasons, I support the Dismantle DEI Act. H.R. 8706 aims to repeal the federal DEI programs across the federal government.
I'm an original co-sponsor of this bill, and I've noted some of the comments here, and I believe we should take a step back and ask ourselves, you know, what do we seek in our republic regarding individual rights, liberties, and freedoms? I mean, do you believe in those core tenets of our republic or not? We have an opportunity before us with this bill to push back against it. The ranking member mentioned a sweeping attack. Yes, this is what we have suffered. We have suffered as a nation a sweeping attack against equality. That's exactly what we're fighting against. Another colleague mentioned oppression and degradation. It's exactly what we're pushing back against. This is a bill that eliminates government-sponsored oppression of individual rights, liberties, and freedoms in the land of the free. Freedom of opportunity, not result.
Our founding documents talked about having a nation where we recognize that all people were created equal. Martin Luther King talked about that being a promissory note because, as we know, that had not always been the case and has not always been the case in our country. And it took too long and has taken too long for us to get where we need to go. But he also said that we shouldn't use the results of segregation, and I think we could also say discrimination, as the justification for future segregation or discrimination. That's what this bill seeks to do. It seeks to reverse some of the policies that have, instead of looked at merit or qualifications or the like, and institute a policy where you are hired on those things instead of where the first thing we look at is factors about our character, our personality, our skin color, our sex, whatever the case is in qualifications for a job. And I'll just point out, you know, there's many of these examples, but the Air Force's Diversity and Inclusion Resource Book has recommendations for unconscious bias, race-specific learning, cognitive diversity teaming, general diversity and inclusion and belonging, and it includes a book title called White Rage. This is the kind of things that are going. We should not discriminate at all in our government.
This bill, titled the Dismantling DEI Act, is an utter disgrace. Having sat and read the text in preparation for today's markup, I have yet another example to tell my constituents about the unserious work of the Republican Party. Now, I'll work with anyone serious about progress, who wants to center the people who call this country home. This isn't it. Do you all know your history? Do you know American history? The original Constitution counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person. During World War II, the federal government forcibly relocated and incarcerated 110,000 Japanese Americans. The FHA practiced redlining in the 1930s and 60s to deny mortgages to Black Americans, which is why we have a racial wealth gap today. I could go on. The GI Bill, which is supposed to be race neutral, denied access to Black Americans, denying them equal access to education and housing benefits, which is why we do not have generational wealth. Don't talk to me about merit when those Black servicemen fought for our freedoms. And I'd also just like to take a personal note of privilege to say, please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouths. Yes. Your perversion of his words and his mission when his children have asked you to stop invoking his name and perverting his work when he was a proud and unapologetic Black man fighting for equality for Black Americans and all marginalized people. So you all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. But I'm not surprised that you would deny American history. What I am, though, is committed. Committed to speaking truth to power, committed to standing up for marginalized communities and vulnerable people, committed to ensuring that everyone has equal opportunity to buy a house, to work a job, to pursue higher education, and to live in a society that is fair and just. A colleague across the aisle invoked the phrase of, we must do everything to stop government-sponsored oppression. Well, I've just enumerated numerous examples, which is exactly why we have legislation and an executive order to reverse this harm. And that is why I'm committed to opposing this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Gentlelady yields back. We'll go back. We'll rotate sides. Chair recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania, then we'll recognize Talib after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time, such time as he may consume, to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins.
I thank my colleague, and I appreciate my Democrat colleague for exemplifying exactly the kind of oppression of freedoms that we're referencing. How about we'll quote whoever we want to quote? How about that's my First Amendment right? That's exactly the kind of baked-in oppression. Like, how dare a white Republican quote Martin Luther King? We actually had a congressman say that just now in this committee. Well, thank you, good lady, for once again exemplifying the type of oppression that we stand against. You know I'm right. You know I'm right.
Order. Mr. Higgins has the floor.
And we will quote who we please to quote.
A disgrace.
And we will continue to speak freely because I'm a veteran. That's the country that I serve. That's the Constitution I swore an allegiance to. And that oath has no expiration date. I will fight for it with my last life's blood. For my right to speak freely and yours, good lady. You will never hear me saying, how dare you quote anybody you please to quote. And that exemplifies, America, precisely the type of institutional oppression that my colleague, Mr. Cloud's bill, for which I'm an original co-sponsor, hopes to push back against.
But Mr. Higgins, have you read your own bill? Have you read your own bill?
No,
Because it
no,
is trying to regulate speech. It is actually
Ms. Stansberry, you're out of order. Ms.
I yield
Stansberry,
back
you're
to
out of
Mr.
order.
Perry.
It's Mr. Perry's time. Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The work of the FDIC is paramount in supervising our banks, strengthening our financial system, finalizing important regulations like Community Reinvestment Act, Basel III, and in times of economic crisis, FDIC is even more important. It was just last year when folks in my district, the MA 7th, were constantly refreshing the agency's webpage to see if their money was safe after the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. The agency's mission is critical, and there is much work to do. I'd initially planned to spend this time discussing regulations and requesting updates from Chair Gruenberg on the timeline for finalizing rules that stabilize our financial system. However, after reading the recent report into the FDIC's workplace, the public needs answers on the toxic culture of racial discrimination and misogyny that has taken root and festered at the FDIC. Chair Gruenberg, you have failed your staff, people of every walk of life, but especially women employees who have brought their knowledge and their skills to serve at the FDIC, and you have failed the American public, who relies on the agency to work productively and to put forth policies that protect consumers from bank malfeasance. Now, I have to just consider the source here when it comes to some of the outrage from my colleagues across the aisle, because these are the same people who seek to actively defund diversity, equity, and inclusion, who denied and undermined the Me Too movement, who voted against the Violence Against Women reauthorization, and who don't want to support finally passing the Equal Rights Amendment. And that is why I am truly disgusted by the fact that you have created an opportunity for Republicans who did all of those things to advance their anti-regulation agenda and to use survivors, which I am one, of abuse as political pawns. Small, ashamed, traumatized, humiliated, alone. These are just a few of the words to describe the intense feelings of sexual harassment and what survivors endure. According to the FDIC's own reporting, more than 80% of harassment complaints resulted in zero discipline. And when there were repercussions, not a single one resulted in removal, reductions in greater pay, or any discipline more serious than a temporary suspension. I am so tired of white men failing up. This lack of accountability is a shameful, inadequate, and deeply unsatisfactory, and it is re-traumatizing. Chair Gruenberg, can you guarantee right now no employee at the FDIC will face any form of intimidation or retaliation for reporting an incident of sexual harassment regardless of confidentiality agreements?
That's our goal, Congresswoman. Yes, the answer to that is yes.
It is shameful that through your inadequate leadership at the helm of this agency that you have fueled calls for your resignation from the political opportunists across this aisle and jeopardized critical regulations pending finalization at your agency. Personally, I do not have confidence that you can continue to lead in this role because there is a deficit of trust and your credibility has been undermined to lead the FDIC through the changes it needs to make to affirm the dignity of the survivors of harassment, discrimination, and abuse at your agency. Thank you, and I yield.